The night was silent, except for the occasional rustling of leaves. In the backyard of an old, run-down house, a dog lay curled inside a rusty cage. His fur was matted, his ribs visible through his thin coat. He had long forgotten what love felt like. His owner, a cruel man with no ounce of compassion, barely fed him. The dog, whom we'll call Rusty, had grown used to the neglect, the hunger, and the loneliness. One afternoon, a delivery guy named Jake pulled up to the house, a small brown package in his hands. He rang the doorbell, but no one answered. With a sigh, he walked around to the backyard to leave the package by the back door. That's when he saw the cage. At first, he thought it was empty, just another piece of junk in the cluttered yard. But then he saw a pair of tired, sunken eyes staring at him. Jake took a step closer, his heart clenching at the sight. The dog barely moved, only flicking his tail weakly. His water bowl was dry, his food dish empty. The cage looked like it hadn't been opened in years. "Hey, buddy," Jake whispered, kneeling beside the cage. Rusty flinched, his body expecting a blow rather than kindness. Jake felt a surge of anger. Who could do this to an innocent creature? He looked around and saw no one. A thought crossed his mind. He had to get this dog out. He pulled at the cage door, testing its strength. It was old and rusty, the metal weak, but still locked. He searched for something to break it, finding a discarded metal rod nearby. Just as he was about to pry the door open, the front gate creaked. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" A deep, menacing voice boomed. Jake turned sharply, his heart racing. The owner had arrived. A tall, burly man with a scruffy beard stood at the entrance, his eyes dark with suspicion. "I was just checking on the dog," Jake said, standing up. "He looks like he hasn't eaten in days." "That's none of your damn business," the man growled, stepping closer. "Get off my property, now." Jake clenched his jaw, his hands forming fists. "This is animal abuse. You can't just leave him like this. He's my dog. I do what I want," the man sneered. "Now get lost before I make you." Jake wanted to fight, wanted to call the cops right then and there. But he had no proof, no way to take the dog without legal trouble. He took one last look at Rusty, who whimpered softly before turning away. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. The dog's sad eyes haunted him. He had to do something. 2 days later, under the cover of darkness, he returned. This time, he came prepared with bolt cutters. He crept into the backyard, his heart pounding. The house was dark, no sign of the owner. Perfect. Jake crouched by the cage and whispered, "I'm back, buddy. Let's get you out of here." Rusty lifted his head slightly, his tail giving a small, hopeful wag. Jake positioned the bolt cutters around the lock, applying pressure. The metal groaned but didn't break. He adjusted his grip and tried again. Snap! The lock fell to the ground. Jake's heart raced in triumph. He pulled the cage door open, but before he could lift Rusty out, a voice sliced through the air. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" Jake barely had time to react before a flashlight beam blinded him. The owner had been watching. He lunged forward, grabbing Jake by the collar and shoving him backward. "You think you can just steal my dog?" he snarled. "He's not your dog. You don't deserve him." Jake shot back, pushing the man off. A scuffle broke out. Jake threw a punch, but the man was stronger. He grabbed a wooden plank from the ground and swung it. Pain exploded in Jake's head, and everything went black. When he woke, his wrists were bound, his body aching. The air was damp, musty. He tried to move but realized he was tied to a chair. "You should have minded your own business." The owner's voice came from the darkness. Jake's mind reeled. Where was he? His eyes adjusted and he saw cold concrete walls. A basement. He was in the psychopath's basement. His stomach twisted. Rusty, was he safe? The last thing he remembered was unlocking the cage. Had the dog escaped? Was he still trapped? Days passed. The man didn't give Jake food or water. He only came down to taunt him, to remind him that no one was coming to save him. But someone was. On the 5th day, sirens blared outside. The front door burst open, and footsteps stormed the house. Moments later, the basement door crashed open. Police officers rushed in, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. "We found him. He's here." Jake barely had the strength to lift his head. Hands untied him, strong arms helping him up. As he was let out, his vision blurred, but he could make out the flashing lights of police cars. Then, something warm pressed against his leg. Jake blinked. Rusty. The dog wagged his tail furiously before jumping up, licking Jake's face. Tears burned in Jake's eyes. How did you?" A police officer stepped forward, holding up a familiar item, Jake's wallet. "This little guy brought it to the station," the officer explained. "Led us straight to the house. Smart dog." Jake looked down at Rusty, pure admiration in his eyes. "You saved me, buddy." Rusty barked happily, nuzzling against him. The owner, now in handcuffs, was being shoved into the back of a police car, his face contorted in rage. Jake didn't care. He had won. Rusty was free, and now they had each other. Jake sat on the hospital bed, his head bandaged and his body aching from days of captivity. The doctors had said he was lucky. If the police had arrived any later, he might not have survived. But even through the pain, one thought gave him comfort. Rusty was safe. As soon as he was cleared to leave, Jake walked straight to the police station. He had to see Rusty again. His heart pounded as he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room until he saw a familiar furry figure. "Rusty!" The dog's ears perked up, and the moment he spotted Jake, he bolted forward. The force nearly knocked Jake over as Rusty jumped into his arms, whining and wagging his tail furiously. Jake chuckled, tears stinging his eyes as he hugged the dog tightly. "You really saved my life, buddy," he whispered into Rusty's fur. "I owe you everything." A police officer approached with a smile. "Seems like he's pretty attached to you. We were going to take him to a shelter, but something tells me he belongs with you." Jake looked down at Rusty, who gazed up at him with pure trust and devotion. "I'd love to take him home." "Then he's yours," the officer said, handing him a few papers to sign. "But there's something else you should know." Jake frowned. "What is it?" "The man who kept Rusty, he's worse than we thought. We searched his house after arresting him. He had more cages in his basement. Some were empty, but we found remains of other dogs. It looks like Rusty was the only one left." Jake's stomach churned with rage. "That monster. He deserved worse. Don't worry. With the charges against him, he's not getting out anytime soon." Jake let out a shaky breath, nodding. He turned back to Rusty, ruffling his ears. "You're safe now, boy. No more cages. No more fear. Just a home." Rusty wagged his tail, pressing his nose against Jake's chest as if he understood. Life changed after that day. Jake, who had lived alone in his small apartment, suddenly found himself with a loyal shadow. Rusty followed him everywhere, whether it was to the kitchen, the couch, or even the bathroom. He was always close, as if afraid Jake would disappear. The first few nights were rough. Rusty had nightmares, whimpering in his sleep, his paws twitching as if he was trying to run away from something. Jake would wake up and gently pet him, whispering soothing words until Rusty finally calmed down. "You're safe now," he repeated night after night, until Rusty finally started sleeping peacefully. Rusty also had to learn how to trust again. The first time Jake reached for a broom to clean, the dog flinched and cowered in a corner. It broke Jake's heart. He knelt beside him, setting the broom down. "Nobody's going to hurt you ever again, okay?" he murmured. "I promise." Slowly, Rusty began to heal. He learned that hands were for petting, not hitting. That voices could be kind, not filled with anger. That food came every day, and he never had to fight for it. And in return, Rusty gave Jake something he didn't realize he was missing: unwavering companionship. Whenever Jake came home from work, Rusty greeted him with excited barks and a wagging tail. On bad days, when stress weighed Jake down, Rusty would lay his head on his lap as if to say, "I'm here." They became inseparable. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching TV, Jake ran his fingers through Rusty's now healthy, golden fur. You know, you're kind of a hero, he mused. Not only did you save me, but you led the cops straight to that psycho's house. Rusty looked up at him, tilting his head. Jake chuckled. You're famous now, buddy. The news even talked about you. Hero dog saves kidnapped delivery guy. Pretty impressive, huh? Rusty let out a happy woof, as if proud of himself. Jake sighed, leaning back against the couch. I just wish I'd found you sooner, before you had to go through all that. Rusty pressed his nose against Jake's hand, his eyes full of warmth and understanding. He wasn't dwelling on the past. He was just happy to be here with Jake. Months passed, and Rusty thrived. He had gone from a frail, frightened dog to a confident, joyful companion. People in Jake's neighborhood adored him, especially the kids who often stopped to pet him during their walks. One day, while walking through the park, a little girl ran up to them, her eyes wide with excitement. Mommy, look, it's the hero dog from TV, she exclaimed, pointing at Rusty. Jake laughed as Rusty wagged his tail, enjoying the attention. The mother smiled warmly. Your story really touched a lot of people. I'm so glad he has a loving home now. Jake nodded, glancing down at Rusty. Me too. As they continued walking, Jake thought about how much had changed. The terrified dog he had found in a rusted cage was now a beloved companion, a symbol of resilience. And Jake himself had changed too. He had never imagined that a simple delivery job would lead him to saving a life, or that a dog would end up saving his. Later that evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Jake sighed contentedly. You know, Rusty, I think we were meant to find each other. Rusty licked his face in response, his tail wagging. Jake grinned. Yeah, I think so too. No more cages, no more fear, just freedom, love, and a new beginning for both of them.